Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans. I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and this is the Win Place Show, a podcast devoted to all aspects of horse racing and handicapping that is proudly part of the Amalfi Media Network. Now, today we have an absolutely huge show for you as we preview the 6 stakes races taking place at the fairgrounds in Louisiana on Lecomte Day. It is a 14 race card highlighted by the Kentucky Oaks Prep Race, the Silverbulletday, the Kentucky Derby Prep Race, the Grade 3 Lecomte, and the Grade 3 Louisiana Stakes that will feature Midnight Bourbon and the return of Mandaloun. Now, in just a few minutes, I'll be joined by Jeff from Charting Horse Value to help me analyze those stakes races. And you're really going to enjoy his perspective. He has a very analytical perspective to horse racing. I think it's a great alternative to maybe how other people might view it. And it just shows very different ways of handicapping a card. He's a great guy, very knowledgeable, very informative, and always willing to share his knowledge and information with others, which I really appreciate. Now, before we get to that, just a quick reminder to follow, download, rate, review, and share the Win Place Show on the podcast platform of your choice. Really appreciate all of those reviews that have been coming in, all of those 5-star reviews. If you have a second, press that 5-star button on Apple iTunes. We really appreciate all the positive feedback we've gotten. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to press that subscribe button and that like button. Leave a comment below to let us know how you think the races are going to play out the whole 9 yards. Now, we have a whole lot of horse racing content here at the Win Place Show. We have the race recaps on Mondays. We have weekly horse racing news coming out every Wednesday. We have race previews coming out on Fridays. And we have industry interviews with some of the leading figures in the sport and more. Now, remember that aside from today's previews, visit amalfimedia.com to get my win, my place, and my show selections for the entire 14 race card on Saturday at the fairgrounds. And a special reminder, next week, I'll be running solo again, so you're just going to get me. And I will be previewing the Pegasus World Cup card at Gulfstream Park. That's got 7 graded stakes races. We're going to go through all of them, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's going to be an exciting Pegasus World Cup day. And another reminder that Stable Duel, which I talk about a lot, is running a $40,000 contest next Saturday at Gulfstream Park for that Pegasus World Cup day. So we're going to have a lot of great content leading up to the Pegasus World Cup, and the best place to get all of that is amalfimedia.com. Finally, make sure to interact with me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace or on YouTube and let me know how you think the races are going to play out, break down what your thoughts are for the various horses in the fields, and share, of course, with your fellow horse racing fanatics on social media. Okay, well, let's welcome Jeff onto the show and break down Saturday's card at the fairgrounds. Hi, Jeff, and welcome to the Win Place Show. I really appreciate you coming by and sharing your information and knowledge with my audience. And I just want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about Charting Horse Value and what you're doing over there and how you have taken, I think, a lot of information. People can get easily overwhelmed with the past performances and all the different products that are out there, and how you've really tried to whittle that down to help people identify the absolute best plays in every race.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for having me on, Matthew. Appreciate it. So I guess, to tell people about Charting Horse Value, it's good to kind of go back to the beginning a little bit. And so I was an electrical engineer at UCLA, and that's where I got into horse racing. Back then, it was Santa Anita, Hollywood Park, and pools were, not even intermingled. Okay, you had separate pools. Kentucky Derby, you get different odds on Sunday Silence in California than you would in Kentucky. So, that's when I started. And, obviously I read a bunch of books and I had my way of handicapping. And then I would go to the track with my friends. And of course, they're not, doing any handicap. They're just going to bet on whatever I tell them to bet on. And, it took a lot of time. I would read the form. I was reading the form for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out the race. And it's hard to be social, have some beverages, enjoy myself. So I said, I gotta have a more automated way of doing this. And so I really took my learnings from the books I read, and I wrote my first computer program back in 1994.
Wow.
Now, my goal when writing that program was trying to figure out the probability that a horse would win the race. And that was really the only thing I was doing. And in fact, when I first wrote it, I was manually entering all the data. There was no automatic source. Okay. So I was manually got a form and manually putting in, and I only had, maybe 10 pieces of data per horse I put in, but I was calculating the odds that this horse should go off at. And then I would go to the track. I would kind of look at my top 3 selections, and I'd see which one was an overlay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd go to the post parade. I'd look at them visually. Everything looks fine. And then I'd make my bet. I was very profitable, very simple way of playing the horses. And, eventually I added a lot more to it. But if you go to my website, www.chartinghorsevalue.com, you'll find actually today the race we're going to talk about on Saturday, the Fairgrounds Saturday race card. There'll be a page on the website called free charts, and you'll find Fairgrounds for Saturday, and you can follow along. But there's a column in my chart called PFDS odds. So that's my original program. And that stands for pace, fitness, distance, surface. And it's the odds. So I'm looking at all the past performances and I'm figuring out the probability the horse will win. And I'm tailoring that based on the pace situation today, his workouts, what's the distance, what's the surface. It's all figured in to that odds calculation. And it works great. I mean, that's really my proprietary IP. I do some other stuff. I do some speed figures. I do some workout analysis. Excuse me. I look at form cycles. I try to figure out horses that can improve. And if they can improve, how much, what we might be able to expect. And then I figure out a value score. And the bigger the value score, you'll find that in my chart, the better the bet. Okay. Mm-hmm. The better the bet on that horse. And you can even figure out the best bet on the whole day by looking at that value score. And then I got a letter grade, some rank columns, and there's blogs, tutorials. It's actually quite easy. And what I try to tell people is all this information for a race is in about, I'm looking at it right now, about 1.5 inches.
Yep.
It's so compact, the entire race. And I'm not telling you who to bet on. In fact, I go into these tournaments and I got some of my customers in these tournaments and we're on different horses. And I look at the horses they have and I can see why they took that horse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a tool, helps you. I mean, there's some times where you're going to look at my chart and you're going to say, I'm betting that horse. It's going to be like a 5-second handicapping. It's going to be so obvious. Those, by the way, are fantastic wagers. But there's going to be other races where it's like, I got no clue. Yeah. And if you're in a tournament or you're playing a serial wager, you got to come up with something. And so you can look through the data, you can analyze it and, figure out the way you want to play it. But, I think it's an excellent tool. It'll make your handicapping stronger. Mm-hmm. It's very efficient. Mm-hmm. You could be a very fast handicapper using it. And it's very affordable. Okay. I'm only charging $25 a month. $240 for a year if you want to go that route. And, I'm doing every single thoroughbred track in America.
Yep.
A little bit more about me. I was a naval officer on a submarine back in the 90s. And then I got out and I, got into business and I retired a couple years ago, but I was my final job, I was a general manager of one of the biggest businesses at Texas Instruments. Mm-hmm. So, I got a brain. I know how to use it. The tool will help you. And, today we had a huge day today. Yeah. Several of my customers did extremely well. I did well too. So, Yeah, that's a little bit about the business.
Yeah, no. And just to let people know, if you're watching on YouTube, you can find a link to Jeff's website below the video. If you're listening on the podcast, you can find it in the episode notes. I also have Jeff's Twitter account linked in both of those places as well. He's a great Twitter follow. You always do a great job interacting with people, going back and forth throughout the day. I know the other day, you and Sarah Albadwi were going back and forth between the eye test versus what the sheets were saying. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's a great product. I've watched your tutorial before. It's very simple to understand, very simple to follow for people who are first timers. And you're right. I know because I've been on your show before. I know enough to know, when there's that K in the one column, those are the easy ones to handicap. Those are the quick ones to look at. So it's a great product, and look forward to capping this great card at Fairgrounds. We got 6 stakes races. The last time you and I talked, we capped another card at the Fairgrounds that did not have six stakes races. That was not quite as strong of a card that day, but we did pretty well though when we did that last time. So let's hope we do well this time. So. Well, let's start things off, and I will just kind of introduce the race a little bit and go through the entrance, and we'll start with race 8, which is the Duncan F. Kenner Stakes. It's 5.5 furlongs on turf for 4-year-olds and up. It's an 8-horse race. In post position 1, you have Sir Alfred James, trained by Norman Cash and jockeyed by John McKee. And then Cowan, trained by Steve Asmussen and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Classy, trained by Sturgis Dukeling and jockeyed by Brian Hernandez Jr. Strike Me Down, trained by Michelle Lovell and jockeyed by Deshaun Parker. Then the morning line favorite, Just Might, also trained by Michelle Lovell, jockeyed by Colby Hernandez. Then Frosted Grace, trained by Tom Amos and jockeyed by Florent Giroux. Then Maniwa, trained by Wayne Catalano and jockeyed by Corey Lannery. And then finally, Mr. Hustle, trained by Juan Munoz Cano and jockeyed by Mitchell Merle. And so, Jeff, I'll turn things over to you to get us started off. Where are you looking in the Duncan F. Kenner Stakes?
Well, first of all, it's a difficult race. And although, you could just take the favorite, Just Might. As I look at the race, I don't see a lot of pace.
Mm-hmm.
The one horse might go with the 5, Just Might. Mm-hmm. The one horse hasn't run on turf in a long time. There's no guarantee the horse will break well and carry the speed on the turf. So you could make a strong case that the 5 will go wire to wire. Now the 3 and the 7, and I think the 3 is actually a really interesting play, Classy John.
Mm-hmm.
But the 3 and the 7 both have the potential, I think, to run underneath the 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one way you could play the race, because the 5 is going to be a short price.
Yep.
You could play 5 over 3-7, assuming the 5 puts away the 1.
Yep.
The horse that really is intriguing me, though, is the 2, Cowan.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked this horse last year. In fact, I bet on this horse in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And he lost to Golden Powell, who's, as you know, a superb horse.
Yep. Very good horse.
He lost by 3/4 of the length. He ran huge, and I had the horse win place, hit the exacta. He was 11-1 that day. Okay. Yep. And he hasn't been back on the turf but one time. He's been running on the dirt. His pedigree, he's out of Cantharos. Cantharos is a fantastic turf horse. I think won a Breeders' Cup race and was actually run. I was at Longchamp one day at the Arc Day. Cantharos raced that day.
Mm-hmm.
Cantharos lost, but he came back to U.S. and won a Breeders' Cup race. But he's got turf pedigree. He tried to run in the Alcaz Sprint, but he was only 3, and it's just way too tough a race. By the way, he only lost by 4 3/4 length.
Right.
So he wasn't like crushed. Okay.
Yep.
Now he's finally getting back on the grass. So I think this horse is very interesting. The big question mark is he's going to be graduating to 4-year-olds and up. He has raced against them a couple times, but obviously he's taken a big step up here against stakes competition. But 8-1 is so sweet. So This is my top play in my sheet. If you're looking at my sheet, every race I give one horse a plus designation. This horse gets the B plus. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes him the best bet in the race with Rosario for Asmussen at 8-1. So that's the route I'm going.
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying. I from an analysis standpoint, I absolutely agree. I think it's the 1-5 going out in front. The one I don't have a lot of faith in necessarily to hold that pace the whole way around. I think the 5, kind of gets the ideal setup here. It's also important to point out for people who may not have watched turf sprints at fairgrounds before, it's a little bit of a funky start in that it's actually starting kind of at the tail end of the second turn. And it's not a straight, you don't really get a straight shot coming out of the gate. It's you kind of immediately break and you're kind of turning a little bit already. And so it's just a little bit of a weird configuration. It's not a severe turn by any stretch, but it's just kind of a little interesting that you see that. I do have Just Might up top in this particular one. I do think Maniwa, the 7, who you mentioned, is a horse I do like quite a bit. This was a horse that was a dirt horse for most of his career, switched to dirt, or I should say, and then switched to turf, and really seemed to like it. Saw a big spike in the speed figures on turf. Actually beat Just Might in this race last year. That was the last time Just Might lost a stakes race, or a non-graded stakes race, I should say. And so, interestingly enough, this horse had a 10-month layoff from February to December, but came back after Christmas and just lost by a length to Just Might. So that was really impressive that he could come from that long of a layoff and run that well against a horse that had been just consistently turning in great performances. So I think it's all about the trip for Maniwa. If he can stay in a good spot, then I think there's a chance he hits there. It's funny, I identified Cowan as a horse that I also like to play underneath at 8-1 because I saw a fair amount of chalk up top in this one. And so this is a race where I might go with some exacta boxes or a trifecta box or something along those lines, and looking for a little bit of value. And you're absolutely right. This was a horse that I noticed that as well, had not been back on turf since the Juvenile Classic. And also, you just have Joel Rosario on the turf, and Joel Rosario on turf sprints is dynamite. And so, yeah. And so
I don't think we're going to get 8-1. But that 5 is going to take a lot of money.
Yes.
And the 7, I'm going to give you one other props there. I think the 7 is legit. 7 coming out of a 46-4 workout.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 7 makes sense. I just trying to beat that 5. I'd rather take a little bit bigger price. Yep. But Maniwa definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yep. So yeah, I think we've identified some of the same horses in this one. Certainly, giving people, I think, a really good sense of where to look, maybe for a top 3, for sure. So for me, I have Maniwa to win. Actually, I'm going to kind of predict a little bit of an upset here. I think second off the layoff, I think he's only going to get better. I have Just Might to place. I have Cowan to show. But I like those top 3. This should be a really strong race. This was a tough one to handicap as well. So let's move to race 10 on the card, which is the second of the 6 graded stakes races, I should say. And this is a 1.16 miles on the turf for 4-year-olds and up, fillies and mares. This is the Marie G. Krantz Memorial Stakes. And this is a 12-horse field, and so I will very quickly run through this. I will not go through all the trainers and jockeys for this one, but in post position 1, you have Abscond, and then in post position 2, Catch a Bid, then Touch of Class, Lovely Ride, Saratoga, Summer in Saratoga, Adelaide Miss, Out of Sorts, Janelle Monet, which is a Brazilian horse, Assertive Style, Pass the Plate, Princess Theorem, and Dawn's Dancer. And I'll just mention that Abscond, the number 1 horse, is the morning line favorite, followed very closely by Summer in Saratoga, going off at 7-2. So the 1 and the 5 horse are the favorites here. And this is, I'll kind of take the turn going first here. And this is an interesting race because this is one where it's a 12-horse field. Only 5 horses have single-digit odds. Only 2 of those are less than 5-1. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for value in this particular race, and I think they're going to see a lot of movement between morning line and post time, and kind of where money is going to end up going. I'll just kind of very quickly talk about a couple of horses that we should address the favorites. Abscond is a horse that is getting a bit of a class drop. Ran a very rigorous 2021, ran 6 graded stakes races, including 2 grade 1s, dropping now down to a non-graded stakes race. Certainly held her own in those graded stakes races, never looked bad. Really only turned in a poor performance one time at the Grade 1 Just a Game. Otherwise, always was around the board, hitting the board a couple times or around the board. The problem with Abscond is this horse just does not like to win. Only 2 wins in 14 career efforts. I think this is a solid horse to include on exotics because this horse likes to come in second and third quite a bit. And particularly at this non-graded stakes level, you see a lot of second and thirds and a lot of tantalizingly close second and thirds. So this is a horse that can break your heart a little bit. But Abscond, I think, is a horse I wouldn't mind using underneath, although at 3-1, you're not getting much value. But I do think this is a horse that I don't really see as a strong win contender necessarily just because of some of that previous performances. Summer in Saratoga, very good horse. This is a graded stakes winner. Came back from a short layoff, won a stakes race at Fairgrounds with a very strong speed figure. Workouts since then have looked very sharp. Like I said, this is a horse that wins at this level, rarely turns in a bad performance. The last 3 times out at Fairgrounds has crossed the finish line first, was stripped from purse money one of those races, but won the other 2. And so should get a nice trip sitting mid-pack, can close very effectively. This is a horse I do like quite a bit. And then I'll just talk very quickly about one horse that I don't really love at this value and one horse that I think is getting really a strong value. So Past the Plate at 6-1 is a horse I don't necessarily love. This feels like a slightly lesser version of Abscond. If you look at Past the Plate, this is a horse that just routinely comes in 3rd and 4th. And I just, 6-1 is not pricey enough for me to like those odds on this particular horse. Having a little bit of a layoff, ran on dirt last time out, so I'm willing to kind of toss that effort at the Chaluki, but still, before that, a lot of thirds, a lot of fourths, always around, but just not a very consistent horse. If you're looking for value, I just don't see it there. The long shot that I like in this race is Lovely Ride, 12-1. This is a horse that went on turf for the first time last time out and really perked up, showed a really strong effort, has a great jockey who is super hot at the Fairgrounds, Raylu Gutierrez. Everybody on social media knows about Raylu. And so, this is a horse that I think should get a really nice trip. I know it was a front-running trip last time. I have a feeling, she'll sit a little further back this time, maybe at 2, 3, 4 position. But this is a horse at 12-1. I don't think you're going to get 12-1, but at 12-1, I really did like the value there, particularly underneath. I think that's a very live horse to look at. So those are a few of the horses that I was kind of looking at and considering. Jeff, where were you looking in this race?
Well, I won't be redundant. You stole a lot of my thunder.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No. Your analysis was perfect, especially number 1. Now, on my sheet in the left column, there's a column called DS for distance and surface. Mm-hmm. And there's a little number under there. And this one says *1*. That's a score from 0 to 5 on my confidence, 5 being the best, 0 being the worst. Mm-hmm. So this is a 1. Okay. So it means I'm not super confident in the race. Yeah. Okay. Or there's not a lot of value. Either way, it's not a great race to bet on.
Yeah.
And if you look over in the value column, you'll see there's just no value. Okay. Yep. Nobody has value. So the morning line set pretty well and not a ton of overlays. I totally agree with your take on the 1. I won't be redundant. Of the 2 short price horses, I definitely like the 5 better.
Yep.
The 5 will probably end up going favored. That horse is 7 for 16 on the turf. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, the one thing about this race is there's very little speed.
Yeah.
And it's very possible this 2 gets an easy lead. Mm. Now, the 2 could not hold off the 5 in the last race. Okay. But if you look at the pace analysis on that race, he went lightning fast.
Yep.
Look at the past performances. It was +13, +15. He had the lead by 3.5 lengths or 2.5 lengths top of the stretch and lost by 1.5 lengths. He went too fast. Okay. Yep. This horse, I think, is a major threat to set a slow pace. Great draw, by the way, in the 2-hole. Mm-hmm. And could slow it down. It's going to be tough to run down. Okay. So I would definitely be using this horse in all vertical exotics. I think the 5 makes sense. Of course, we mentioned the 1. I love the 4, Lovely Ride. Okay. Yeah. That's also a great long shot pick. Um, and the horse that I am probably going to bet to win is the 8.
Okay.
Okay, Janelle Monáe.
Yep.
This horse is shipping from Brazil for Brad Cox, and I don't know what we got here, but I hope I get 8-1. Rosario and Cox win 31% of their races.
Yep.
Cox wins 36% first time Lasix, 29% shipper to the United States. By the way, he wins 26% of the races he enters anyway.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, if you can get 3-1 on this horse, you're probably getting a fair price.
Yeah.
This horse is a definite overlay at 8-1.
Yep.
Okay, so in vertical, I would be playing. I'm probably more interested in playing this race serially. I think some crazy things could happen in the verticals, exotic, exactas, trifectas. I'm going to try to survive with the 2, 4, 5, 8.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to toss the favorite, the 1.
Yep.
And vertically and horizontally, I'm going to try to survive with 2, 4, 5, 8. But I'm going to bet the 8 to win. I'm looking for a price again. And I guess I'm going Rosario back to back on the stakes races.
Hey, you could do worse than that strategy. I mean, that's not bad, not a bad strategy.
One of them, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you hit 1 out of 2, you're still sitting pretty. So
They're both 8-1 morning line.
Exactly. No, and to your point, Janelle Monáe never lost a race. I mean, and has run, I know people might, scoff a little bit about horses coming out of Brazil. We've seen some good horses coming out of Brazil, though. And this is 3 straight grade 1s down there, too. I mean, it's really classy horse. And Brad Cox would not be taking a swing on this type of a horse if he didn't have a lot of faith in him. So, or her, I should say.
I think this is a very good horse. And, Rosario gets on board. No, this is 8-1 is is highway robbery if you get 8-1.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised you get 4-1.
Yeah.
But anything above 3-1, I think, is actually fair. Yeah. And this is wide open. There's nobody that good in this race. Catch a Ride, Summer Saratoga. Yeah. None of these horses are that good.
No.
So try to get a price. Watch the tote board. Watch the odds. See what happens. And then I just want to reiterate that 4 you mentioned. That horse is 12-1 morning line. And then if you want to, again, Catch a Ride, that horse could go wire to wire.
Yep.
There's not much to slow him down. And wire to wire, that horse is 8-1. So look for a price in this race.
Yep. I agree with you. I agree with you on that. And it's interesting. We've seen in some high profile races recently, I'm just thinking particularly out west, Beyond Brilliant did this. You saw this at Gulfstream a couple times. Those turf horses, a lot of times we think of turf racing, that turn of foot, coming from the back, or mid pack and really making a run. But if you can get a horse that can control speed up front and can really slow it down, and then they have enough turn of foot themselves to kind of close the deal up front. So, a lot of times we think of front runners on dirt, not on turf, but it can be a very effective play on turf as well, especially when you look at the rest of the field. And as you said, there's not a lot of early speed in this race outside of that. So, I like that suggestion. For me, just from a top 3 standpoint, I am going to go win with Summer and Saratoga. I'm going to go place with Lovely Ride. And I think it's funny, I was contemplating whether I ought to play Abscond to show or Janelle Monáe. You might have just convinced me to play Janelle Monáe to show. But I do like that horse quite a bit. And, the workouts have looked very sharp, even though the horse has not run for a while, but it's shipped here to the United States, been running for Cox and working out for Cox for quite a while. Yeah. So let's move to a much smaller field, and that's the 11th race, and this is the Silverbulletday Stakes. This is the Kentucky Oaks Prep race, and this is just a 6-horse field. This is 1 mile and 70 yards on dirt for 3-year-old fillies, and I'll just run through the field very quickly. In post position 1, you have Fanny and Freddie, trained by Albert Stahl Jr. and jockeyed by Kobe Hernandez. Then Berna Breezy, trained by Matt Shire and jockeyed by James Graham. Then Miss Chamita, trained by Norman Cash and jockeyed by John McKee. Sweet as Pie, the Todd Pletcher horse, jockeyed by Florent Giroux. Then you have the morning line favorite, La Crete, which is trained by Steve Asmussen and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. And then finally, Candy Raid, trained by Keith DeSormo and jockeyed by Jose Racalme. So, Jeff, small field, really interesting odds that you have 4 horses that are all really tightly bunched together from a morning line standpoint, 3 of them in particular. So where are you looking in this race?
Well, they got the odds wrong on that one horse. That one horse is not going to be 5-2. Horse is going to drift up. The 4 and the 5 are going to take the heavy money. First of all, Silver Bullet Day, you said the name of the race. What a horse.
Yeah.
I doubt we'll have anything quite that good here. But the 4 and the 5 are the horses to look really hard at. And the 4, here's the problem I have with the 4.
Yeah.
The 4 stepped up into a $150,000 stakes race, went off 2-1, and got beat 4 3/4 lengths.
Yep.
Okay, so that was kind of a fail. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But the 4, obviously, they paid $490,000 for it. It's Pletcher and Giroux, bred by Hillendale, Tappet to Smart Strike. I mean, this horse is worth a lot of money. They expect big things.
Yeah.
But the 5 might be just a beast. Okay.
Yep.
This is La Crete, bred by Stone Street, owned by Stone Street. When these breeders keep their horses, they love them.
Yep.
Okay. Asmussen to Rosario. Horse breaks his maiden under a gallop in 1:45-2. That's solid. This is second race, going to improve. I'm going to go La Crete. I think you got to basically pick one horse. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is that kind of race. You don't go deep.
Yeah.
If you like the 4 better, pick the 4. Okay. But I'm going to go La Crete. I also think La Crete is probably the speed of the speed and is going to be able to just gallop up front, and they're going to have a tough time running La Crete down. And we know Asmussen loves these mares. Okay.
Yep.
So Fast and Freddy is going to drift up. That would be the 3rd horse I like, but that's how I see it.
Yep. No, it's. I agree with your analysis there 100%. I think La Crete has the chance to be a real strong horse. It's always tough in these races. When you don't have a lot of information, horses have 1, maybe 2 efforts. Horses obviously can improve or regress depending on how their careers go. And so, you have just less information to go on sometimes in these early races and, early races in a horse's career. But La Crete, I also agreed. I had up top. That was the horse. I agree with you. This is a horse that there's 2 things I love about it. One, to your point that you just made, this horse gets to the lead and I think just runs away. And I just think this horse wires the field. The other thing is this horse broke its maiden at the distance of the race, basically. And so you see some horses stepping up in distance, going, 6 furlongs, 7 furlongs. This horse went 1 mile and a 16th and just rolled. And that's not all that common that's not particularly common to see out of the gate, to see horses just breaking their maiden first time out at 1 mile and a 16th. So that was, I thought, particularly impressive to see. And it just addresses any issues of distance, which, to your point, the 4 horse, Sweet as Pie, that's a horse, when it did step up, it stepped up in distance, stepped up in class and distance, went from 6 furlongs to 1 mile. And that's when we saw that performance. But, that said, there's probably no trainer I trust more in getting a horse ready for a distance than Todd Pletcher. So, I think Sweet as Pie is going to go out and run an effective race. It's funny. I also am not that thrilled on the 1, Fanny and Freddie. I think it's a good horse. I just don't. I agree with you. I didn't think the morning line surprised me. I'll just say that at 5-2. I thought this was a solid horse, but I was not, overwhelmed. And then I think the real X factor for me in this race was Berna Breezy going off at 9-2. This was a horse that dropped, ran $122,000 maiden special weight, finished, 5th, about 7 lengths back, then goes next time, drops down in class essentially, still runs a maiden special weight, but drops down to a 45,000. And you see about a 30-point jump in the Beyer speed figures and wins by 2.5, also going a mile and a 16th. So, I don't know if that 76 Beyer speed figure was anomalous. I don't know what we can extrapolate from that, if we can expect a repeat or a regression. So I just think there's some, I just don't know what to expect necessarily out of that horse. A little bit of an unknown. But
horse did have Lasix on
yep.
in that effort. Takes the Lasix back off today.
Yeah.
So, with the 4 and the 5, they've never seen the Lasix, which I think is a positive sign.
Yeah.
But this is not a very interesting race, but I'll enjoy watching it, and hope. I love the Asmussens, so hope they can pull it off.
Yeah. Nope. And that's the way I see it. I have Lecomte to win. I have Sweet as Pie to show, and I am going to play Bernard Breezy underneath, Sweet as Pie to place, and then Bernard Breezy to show, just to maybe catch a little bit of value on the very back end if you're playing some exotics. But this feels like a potential single in those pick 4s, pick 5s with Lecomte. So let's move to race 12, which is the Colonel E.R. Bradley Stakes. And this is another massive field. This is another 12 horse turf race, a mile and a 16th for 4-year-olds and up. Again, I'll just go over the horse names rather than going through all the connections in the interest of time. But in post position 1, you have Logical Myth. In post position 2, you have Halo Again. Then Calvary Charge, Own Agenda. Not Known Agenda. That horse has not been seen, I think, since the run for the Triple Crown, but Own Agenda. Major Fed, 2 Emmys. This is the morning line favorite at 3-1. Excess Magic in the 7-hole. Monarchs Glenn, great British horse from Mike Maker. Bodie Cream, Lucky Curlin, Dine O Might, and then the final horse is 40 Under. So this is another one which is an interesting race. This is maybe, at least in my opinion, Jeff, this is maybe the complete opposite of the last turf race we talked about, in that there's going to be a lot of speed in this race. When I was amazed, I don't know if I've seen a turf race with this many horses that like to be on the lead in one race. I mean, I went through and counted, and 6 of the 12 horses in the field have shown a desire to sit 1-2 early on in a race. You never see that in a turf race. Rarely. I mean, you typically see 1 or 2 rabbits, maybe some horses that like to sit, pretty forwardly placed stalking, but it's rare to see this many horses that like to get to the lead. They're not all going to get to the lead. Or if they do, it's going to be just a crazy hot pace. So for me, I kind of started looking at, okay, where are the deep closers? Where are the closers with the really strong turn of foot that can come from mid-pack or from behind? Because I'm just worried about what that pace is going to do up front. And I don't know who's going to get what type of ride out of everybody trying to get to the lead, and how much they're going to push their horse, or if people are going to try to be smart and hold something back. So this was a tough one for me. But the 2 horses that I kind of looked at were Halo Again. I think this is a horse that might be worth a swing. Perked up a bit on the turf the first time in a front-running effort, but I don't think he's going to sit front-running this time. I think he's going to try to go 4-5 and sit a little further back. Like I said, if he tries to get to that lead, then I'm worried about him. At 6-1, I think you're getting decent odds. But this is a horse that beat Monarchs Glenn and was a big long shot at 14-1 that day. And has decent turf pedigree, even though that was really his kind of first effort on turf, particularly from the siblings. If you look, this is a horse that siblings have run very, very well on the turf. So suggests that this horse may not have even run its best race yet on turf. So I think that was a positive. And this is a horse that has run really well on the synthetic at Woodbine, has running up against, that really strong contingent of horses up there, Mighty Heart, Sir Winston, Special Forces, kind of trading blows with the 4 of them, all kind of taking turns, winning, placing, showing in a lot of those graded stakes races up at Woodbine. So it's gone up against big time competition. I just think this is a horse that, like I said, perked up on turf, and I just think is good value. And then the other one, who's a little bit more of a deep closer, is Monarchs Glenn, who I mentioned at 8-1. This is a horse that I also really liked. I think just is one of the few natural deep closers, has a really good turn of foot. The only concern here is that Monarchs Glenn never quite seems to get there. Always, it's like making a charge and always ends up third by a length, or, fourth by, 3/4 of a length. It's always close, but never quite there. And so that's a horse I think will hit the board. Also has had a rotating list of jockeys, which sometimes for me is a little bit of a red flag. Just never seems to keep the same jockey from race to race, which it can be a little bit of an issue. But I think behind this particular pace, I'm interested in. And then, what I'll say is 2 Emmys, the morning line favorite. I'm just not a big fan of. This is a horse that's cutting back in distance, and I just don't think has the speed to compete with what's going to be out in front in this particular race. This was a horse that won as a huge long shot at the Mr. D at Arlington Park at 27-1, but and does have a very good record at fairgrounds, but still, I just that cut back in distance and the amount of speed in this race, I'm just skeptical. So, Jeff, I feel like this is a race you could go a lot of different directions in. So where are you going in this one?
Yeah, you hit a lot of really good points. So first of all, this race gets a 0 score. That's the absolute lowest. So you definitely want to be taking a long shot.
Yeah.
Totally agree. 2 Emmys is way too short a price and cutting back, doesn't have the speed. I don't know how. I mean, he beat Domestic Spending in the Mr. D.
Yeah,
that has to be maybe one of the biggest upsets of the year. So I'm against 2 Emmys, too short a price. My top selection is Monarchs Glenn.
Okay.
I think the pace is going to set up.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not going to tell you I love this horse. Okay, I don't. But someone put a gun in my head and said, "You got to bet on this race." That's the horse I've come up with.
Yep.
Good closer, and going to get a lot of pace to run at. But the problem is, it's going to be a crazy turn. Okay. Yep. A lot of horses are going to be stopping. A lot of horses are going to be going wide. Some are going to be trying to dive inside. Yep. And you're going to have to get lucky and get a trip. Calvary Charge, I looked hard at, but Calvary Charge is kind of a speed horse, but might be, at least runs at the distance and is coming off some very sharp efforts. Since this horse switched to the turf, this horse is 4 for 7. Okay. Hernandez has ridden in the last 4 times. He's won 3 races in a row. So if I am going to play a speed horse, I'm going to look hard at the 3. Who I think is actually true speed, or he won't be very far off, that's for sure. He'll get the trip. He's the speed horse I like. He's 8-1 morning line. And then my long shot, and I don't love this horse, is the 1. If you go back to Mountaineer, this horse was the favorite and beat Monarch Glenn. And so he's getting some love in my sheet because of that. Then he took a little small layoff. He's come back twice and completely disappointed.
Yeah.
And got beat by Halo again, Monarch Skin. And, Beskiza stays on. They're going to take the blinkers off. I don't really, and by the way, the trainer's solid blinkers off.
Yeah.
But, maybe, he and Beskiza had a conversation and they want the horse, maybe the horse is maturing. They want the horse to relax more. I like the inside draw. I will say that.
Yeah.
So that's my long shot, but I'm gonna play it 8-3-1.
Okay, I like it. So for me, I'm going to go Halo again to win. I'm going to go Monarchs Glenn to place, and I'm actually going to go with a horse that we haven't mentioned yet, Own Agenda, to show. This is a horse at 10-1. This is a horse oddly I like a little bit as well. Has had 2 massive layoffs, but it also came back and ran a really sharp second to Monarchs Glenn last time out, and then took 5 months off and then won an optional claimer at this distance at Fairgrounds. Again, wide open field. And I just feel like you're right. It's going to come down to somebody's going to get a good trip. And, this one it's a tough one to call, but I think Monarchs Glenn, I think if you're going to play this, I would really look at those deep closers. I mean, somebody's going to get a good, a good run out of this pace up front because it's going to be tough up front. So
yeah, I got to tell you, I have a very hard time choosing between the 3 and the 8.
Yeah.
I know you don't like the 3 that much, but the 3, can run from 4th or 5th and still win this race.
Yeah.
And gets I like the draw, West Point Thoroughbreds. Dallas Stewart always gets horses ready to run.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're predicting a fast pace. Trust me, my predictions are often wrong when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I'm going to use the 3-8 in horizontals. I'm just hope to get lucky.
Yeah.
But I have a very time choosing between those two horses.
Yeah.
But I like that I get a speed horse, or at least a front running horse, might get the jump on people, and then I get that great deep closer if the pace is just wicked fast.
Yep. No, I like that. I like that play. I do. I think, what we talked about earlier, if you can control the pace up front and real speed versus fake speed. And I think that's a really good distinction that you made earlier, because if you look at a horse like Two Emmys is always on the lead, but Two Emmys is not real speed. I mean, particularly not in this race. Cutting back, you look at those fractions, that she's run before, or that he's run before, in the first opening half mile, they're a good 2 seconds slower than everybody else's opening half mile that they typically run. So, no, I like Calvary Charge is a good one. And I'll say this, last week, Jessica Paquette was on, and she talked about a horse that had disappointed twice off a layoff. And she said, I just have a feeling this third time's going to be the charm. Son of a gun, horse ended up in the winner's circle. So, sometimes you never know. It takes a while for them to kind of get back into form occasionally.
Yeah, you mean Logical Myth? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's an interesting long shot. So those are the three I like, 1, 3, 8. But all right, let's do the next one.
Yeah, let's move to the Louisiana Stakes. And this is a small field that's getting smaller, actually, by the day, as we find out new information. But this is the Grade 3 Louisiana Stakes, and this is probably going to end up being a 6-horse race because post position 1 was Chess Chief, but he has just declared that he is going to be running at the Pegasus World Cup next weekend, so he is going to be scratched from the Louisiana Stakes. So starting at post position 2 is Mandaloon, trained by Brad Cox and Florent Giroux, who is the even money morning line favorite. Then Midnight Bourbon, trained by Steve Asmussen and Joel Rosario at 6-5. Sprawl, trained by Thomas Drury Jr. and jockeyed by Colby Hernandez. Pirates Punch, trained by Grant Forster and jockeyed by Corey Lannery. Warrant, another Brad Cox horse, jockeyed by Brian Hernandez Jr. And then finally, Long Shot Spa City, trained by Tom Amos and jockeyed by James Graham. So, Jeff, I'm glad I'm not going first on this one because I don't want to have to choose between Mandaloon and Midnight Bourbon first. So I'm going to let you do that. So where do you see this one going?
Okay, well, first of all, this is a $150,000 race, so basically the winners are going to get $100,000.
Yep.
Okay, and Chess Chief opts out of it to run in the $3 million Pegasus, where third place. I have no idea what third place pays, but it's probably several $100,000.
Yeah.
Okay, and they probably figure they got a better chance to make more money in that race than this one. Mm-hmm. Now, Life is Good, and I don't want to talk about the Pegasus, but Life is Good and Nick's Go. They're going to run 1-2.
Yeah.
I don't know what order they're going to run yet, but they're going to run 1-2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
And everyone else is going to be fighting for third. Yeah. And Chess Chief, the owner, said, "You know what? I'd rather fight for third over there than fight for third over here."
Yep.
I think that's how strong the two favorites are in here.
Yep.
They're, by the way, both Lasix on.
Yeah.
Midnight Bourbon goes blinkers on. First time in his career. Now, I love Midnight Bourbon, okay? I bet on him in the Lecomte last year, same day, okay? A year later. We're talking about the same thing. Now, Midnight Bourbon that day went wire to wire.
Yep.
And hasn't been able to go wire to wire since, but it's been racing against, obviously, the best horses there are. Gets blinkers on today, gets Rosario. They're obviously going to the lead. And, it's tough, okay?
Yep.
The problem is Mandaloon has handled Midnight Bourbon, other than that Lecomte, every single other time they faced each other. Yep. Midnight Bourbon's got some great races in the Travers, in the Pennsylvania Derby, but kind of disappointing in the Clark.
Yeah.
They were trying to get his grade 1 there. He went off favored, and pretty disappointing effort, okay? And I actually wanted to see them give this horse a little time.
Yeah.
I mean, after that Pennsylvania Derby, I don't know why they didn't just put him away for a few months.
Yep.
But they tried to get him that grade 1. Mandaloon, in the meantime, has been resting.
Yeah.
Probably putting on a lot of weight, a lot of muscle. This horse is going to be ready to go. So I hate to do it. I'm going to pick Mandaloon.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mandaloon's the better horse and will run Midnight Bourbon down the stretch, but they'll run one too.
Yep. It's hard to see this race playing out any other way. You know how this race is going to go. I mean, Midnight Bourbon is going to get to the lead, and I think the question is a mile and a 16th kind of the perfect distance for Midnight Bourbon, where that front running style doesn't give Mandaloun enough time to catch up? Because you're right, the Lecomte, which is also a mile and a 16th, was the last time Midnight Bourbons won a race. And, when stepping up to a mile and an eighth, mile and a quarter, what do we see? Caught down the stretch, fought gamely but weakened. You see a lot of the same notes over and over again for Midnight Bourbon. And you saw it in the Clark that Maxfield put pressure on Midnight Bourbon around that, down the backstretch a little bit. And just that mile and a quarter, just that last furlong, just really, Happy Saver and Maxfield just kind of showed their class and went past. I'm a sucker for Midnight Bourbon. I just cannot freaking quit this horse. And so and to your point, LASIK's on, blinkers on. And I was like, oh man. And after the Clark, it's the funniest thing. I went to because my dad was all over Maxfield and I was all over Midnight Bourbon. And after the race, he said, you've got to stop betting Midnight Bourbon. And I said, I know, I'm not going to bet him again. And then I see, cutting back in distance and the blinkers are on, the LASIKs are on, and I'll talk myself into that horse, I think, no matter what. So I'm going to keep going with Midnight Bourbon up top. And I say it begrudgingly, but I really do think this horse is going to win at a mile. I think it's going to come down to distance. I think if this was a mile and an 18th, or mile and an eighth, I should say, I'm going Mandaloun every day. But I think a mile and a 16th, I just think Midnight Bourbon is going to have enough to hold them off coming down the stretch. But I agree, these two are much the best. Do you have any sense of who you like underneath those two? Do you have a sense of who you think you like in third at all or not?
The 6.
Oh, yeah.
I like
Warrant.
the 6 and third. Warrant. I like Hernandez getting on Warrant. And I think that's the horse I like in third. Gets $10 of value on my sheet. Gets a C grade.
Yep.
That's the one. Oh, it gets blinkers on as well, I think.
Yep.
No, he doesn't. Sorry. I like the 6. So one other comment I wanted to make. By the way, I'm going to root for Midnight Bourbon.
No, of course.
So I'm with you. And by the way, if the odds drifted up to 2-1, I'm going to bet it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you never know. Mandaloun might go off at 3-5. Okay.
Right.
And so I'm going to watch the odds closely. If the odds are the right way, I might look at Midnight Bourbon. The LASIK's on is a big factor.
Yeah.
The distance is a factor. The blinkers on, all that are big factors. There's a rumor that Mandaloun bled in the Louisiana Derby. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then they figured it out. They figured out how, they had a big break after that Louisiana Derby before the Kentucky Derby, and they got things figured out. But this horse may really move up on the LASIKs.
Yeah,
okay?
that's true.
That is a rumor. Take it for what it's worth. That was the one bad race that horse ran last year. Other than that, the horse never ran a bad race.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm going to root for Midnight Bourbon, but I'm going to tell you, I think Mandaloun wins.
Yeah. My head tells me Mandaloun's going to win too, but I'm going to be a sucker and still go with Midnight Bourbon up top. But it's funny though. I also identified Warrant as the horse that I liked underneath those two. I think I would have liked Sprawl, but I think Sprawl's going to wear himself out and is going to fade a little bit. And I think Warrant has just shown progressive improvement over the last few races, and is a strong horse in his own right, and so I think is very capable of kind of coming in a nice third place there. And certainly, we'll see how odds fluctuate between now and post time, but could add a little bit of value if you're betting deeper exotics. So let's move to the last one, which is the namesake, the Lecomte Stakes. And this is a 9-horse field going a mile and a 16th on dirt for 3-year-olds. This is a Kentucky Derby prep race where the winner will get Kentucky Derby points. In post position 1, you have Surfer Dude, trained by Dallas Stewart and jockeyed by Raylu Gutierrez. Unified Report, also trained by Dallas Stewart, jockeyed by Corey Lannery. Papacap, the morning line favorite at 8-5, trained by Mark Cassie and jockeyed by Joe Bravo. Trafalgar, trained by Albert Stahl Jr. and jockeyed by Colby Hernandez. Epicenter, Steve Asmussen's horse, jockeyed by Joel Rosario, going off at 9-5. Cyberknife, Brad Cox and Florent Giroux. Blue Kentucky, a Wayne Catalano horse, jockeyed by Jareth Loveberry. Call Me Midnight, a Keith DeSormo trained horse, jockeyed by James Graham. And then finally Presidential, also trained by Steve Asmussen and jockeyed by Brian Hernandez Jr. So I will just kind of quickly kind of talk through this one a little bit. But this is one where I look at the two favorites. I see Papa Cap as a very good horse, who has turned in very strong performances out on the West Coast. I see Epicenter as a potentially great horse. And I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. That last effort at the Gunrunner Stakes was just so incredibly impressive. And just putting people away down the stretch at the, stretching out in distance. Asmussen just appears to have a very deep stable, as he always tends to. But I just think Epicenter I just couldn't get past that horse and looking over this field. And I just think this is a horse that's only going to continue to improve, as ran a 87 Beyer speed figure last time out, drew away, just ran with ease in that race, and won by 6.5 lengths, and kind of blew away Surfer Dude, who was kind of a favorite going, or one of the shorter odded horses going into that race. So horse I really liked. Like I said, Papa Cap I think is very strong, but I just feel like Papa Cap has not gotten a win the last 3 times out. Runs second, runs fourth. So it's a horse I just don't necessarily have all the confidence in the world in. And then underneath that, the horse that I kind of keep going back to is Trafalgar. Really dug in and won at this distance the last time out. I'm not sure this horse has another gear. All 3 of his races are basically within 4 speed points of each other, so I don't know if there's a natural progression which you like to see out of younger horses. But that said, his trainer Albert Stahl Jr., very nice stats: 31% winner in graded stakes races, 32% winning kind of consecutive races coming off a win the last time out. So Trafalgar to me was one of those horses that I liked underneath, but it was hard for me to get past that first flight of favorites. But Jeff, I'm interested. Did you see any value in this one, and where are you looking?
No value whatsoever. And remember, I was picking a lot of 8-1 shots earlier. Okay.
Yeah.
I call the race like I see it.
Yep.
I think this is a race between the 3 and the 5. They probably run 1-2.
Yep.
You're making me think on Epicenter. I got to go watch that race. I didn't see it, so I'm strictly going off the data and the form. I think so I have a number called the energy rating on my charts, and this is like a speed figure, and Papa Cap towers over the field.
Yes.
Okay. Now Papa Cap lost to Pinehurst and then Corniche twice. Yep. Corniche is probably going to get 2-year-old a year. All 3 trained by Baffert on the West Coast. Yep. There's no Baffert in here. Corniche would be 1-9 in this race.
Yeah.
That horse is damn good.
Yeah. Second
in a field 11. They ran 142-2. Okay.
Yep.
That's flying.
Yes.
So for me, it's Papa Cap.
Yep.
But your points on Epicenter, Winchell, Asmussen, it's the whole story I love.
Yeah.
I love Winchell and Asmussen, and Rosario's up. I mean, everything you said, the horse might be brilliant.
Yeah.
Horse is definitely going to have to improve to beat Papa Cap.
Yes.
Okay. I think those run 1-2. I don't have a great third horse. Probably Cyberknife.
Yeah.
Is probably the third horse. Brad Cox and Giroux. That looks like the third best horse, but I think the other 2 run 1-2. I think it's Papa Cap.
Yeah. No, Papa Cap. To your point, when you look at the fractions of that Breeders' Cup Classic versus or the Breeders' Cup Juvenile versus like the race at 1 1/16 that Epicenter just ran, I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, they're flying compared to what that Gunrunner Stakes look like. So you're right. You're going to have to see Epicenter have a pretty big improvement over that. So yeah.
Yeah. There is quite a bit of speed in here. I don't think any of the speed, it could hurt. The speed could hurt Epicenter a little bit, whereas Papa Cap has no problem coming from out of it.
Right.
So I think everything kind of sets up for Papa Cap. That's just my opinion.
Yep.
So I think he goes 1, 2, 3, 5.
Yep.
And then I'll use the 6 underneath. The long shot that kind of interests me is the 8, Call Me Midnight.
Yeah.
But ran absolutely awful in the Kentucky Jockey Club.
Yep.
But looked halfway decent before that. Actually beat Surfer Dude in a Keeneland race, but took 5 starts to break his maiden. That's a big negative for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it might be a really nice horse. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to own him, but he's not in the same league as the 3 and the 5. Right.
Yeah. No, I see. Much like the Louisiana Stakes, I do see this as really a 2-horse race as well, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. I'm excited to see. I'm always excited to see these Derby horses, these Oaks horses, see what they're able to do, see what they're able to step up for on this. So, well, that concludes the card. So, Jeff, thank you so very much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And just remind everybody again the name of your website and where they can find you on Twitter.
Chartinghorsevalue.com. And Twitter is a little harder, but it's info charting HO1.
And
basically I didn't understand how to set up a Twitter name. I ran out of letters, so I'm very new to all this social media, but obviously it's very critical, in the business I'm in.
Yep.
But, I mean, I'm very confident in my product. Okay. And I'm confident that people that are listening, if they want to make bets, it'll make you a better handicapper, and you might even make a few bucks.
Yep, absolutely agree, and cannot endorse Jeff's product enough. It's a really great product, and especially if you're somebody who's betting on a lot of tracks, throughout the year, it's a really great investment. So definitely go to his website, check it out, and follow him on Twitter. And Jeff, thank you again. I really appreciate your time tonight, and all the best this weekend.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, that's it for today. A big thank you again to Jeff for his time and insight. And you can get all of Jeff's social media and website information in the episode notes or underneath the video if you're watching on YouTube. He's a great follow and a genuinely great guy. I cannot thank him enough for him taking the time early on in my career to have me on his show. And it's great to have him come on the Win Play show. Always appreciate Jeff's insight and knowledge. He's a really active member on social media and always very willing and eager to share information and help others and engage in some really productive dialogue about horse racing and handicapping. So, like I said, I hope you enjoyed today's preview, and remember to come back next week for the massive showdown between Nick Sko and Life is Good at the Pegasus World Cup. I got a lot of thoughts on that race. I can't wait to share them with you next week, and we're going to dive deep on not just that race, but all of those stakes races at Gulfstream Park next Saturday. Now, before we get to that, remember that today, you can go to amalfimedia.com and get my win, place, and show selections for the entire 14-race Saturday card at the fairgrounds. So make sure to go to the website and check those out. And also make sure to look at all of our horse racing content at Amalfi Media and the Win Play show, like our weekly race recaps, our horse racing news episodes coming out every Wednesday, and our frequent interviews with figures from across the industry. Finally, just a reminder to follow, download, rate, review, and share the Win Play Show on the podcast platform of your choice. Subscribe to the Win Play Show on YouTube, in addition to following me on Twitter at the handle @FailToMenace for all the great horse racing content you need to get ready for the 2022 run for the Triple Crown and more. Until next time, friends, I'm Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.